My hands trembled as I watched Professor Langley slide his glasses down the bridge of his nose, squinting at the proposal I'd spent the last 3 months perfecting. The committee room's walls pressed in, grimly beige, splashed with outdated posters about ethics and excellence, things that felt far away from me in that moment. Across the crescent table, the assembled professors muttered among themselves. Afterward, Professor Langley ran a finger along the heading, Data as Art, visualizing city patterns through human stories, pursed his lips, and finally set the proposal down. Elena, he said, you're proposing a data sculpture that, what tells a story about Londoners using digital mapping and colored lights. The others murmured. Dr. Preble's earring flashed as she shook her head. Yes, I managed, gripping the edge of the tacky chair. I'd use live data feeds, transit, weather, social media, anything that maps movement and mood, to create installations that breathe with the city. It's my models. Model or fever dream, I wonder, Langley interrupted. The snickers bit more than I'd expected. I pressed on. Art can reveal patterns, emotions in data that cold charts can't. Imagine city squares glowing with the pulse of who we are, right now. He exhaled, heavy and dull. What we're being asked, Miss Glass, is whether this is art, science, or frankly, a distraction. My voice wavered. It's both. It's a bridge. They sighed. I left the room an hour later, proposal stamped with the flat black letters, rejected, reason, unrealistic, lacks artistic merit and practical feasibility. Outside, the cold air of March clawed at my skin. I gulped it down, stinging, as I texted my brother that it was over and waited through the blue bubble pause before his reply came. Come home, dinner's on, forget this data stuff. Home was 2 short train rides away, southeast London. I unlocked the door to the familiar tangle of coat hooks and trainer piles. Mum's voice called, always too loud, Ellie, that you, put the kettle on, will you? I set my bag down. Matthew already sat at the chipped kitchen table, scrolling on his phone. He didn't look up. The hum of radiators filled the space. Mum bustled in, quick to notice my hunched shoulders. Rejection, love, she didn't so much ask as state it. I nodded. She tried to be soft in her own way, but her voice clipped. Well, that's that then. Some of these big dreams, they're just. She made a motion, puffing her cheeks, letting the air out with a dismissive raspberry. Matthew grinned. Maybe you can work for that new call center. You're good at chatting. I dropped the kettle on, steam roared. Mum shook her head. This city is full of those, Ellie. Everyone with some mad idea that's half computer, half art project. You need something solid. The doorbell rang, a neighbor holding a misdelivered letter. She glanced at me, home for good. Before I could answer, Mum did. She's back. Done with all that nonsense at uni. Nonsense, the word stuck, even as my chest flared with defiance. I sipped my tea and stared at the mug's swirling brown surface. I'd never felt so small. But beneath all the embarrassment, something warmer glowed. It wasn't done, not for me. For weeks I searched for jobs. Analyst, clerk, tutor. Nobody seemed to want a would-be data artist. Every rejection strung, quieter now but alive. I made lists at night, ideas, sketches for interactive maps, models that mapped how Londoners moved, what they tweeted when buses surged with laughter and when they slumped with morning fatigue. I learned how to scrape and tangle data, how to turn heartbeats into pixel flows. Matthew would walk into the living room and catch me hunched over the second-hand laptop, still playing with your graphs. Sometimes he'd nudge Mum. She's at it again. Some nights when the mockery cut too deep, I'd slam the lid shut and go for a walk. Rain misted the sodium streetlights. I wandered the city's veins, watched buses rattle by, listened for the silent stories in the way people moved, hurried, slouched, arms crossed, eyes darting to phone screens. It was all there, this living network nobody else seemed to see. One evening, as I walked past the community centre, I paused beneath a flickering security lamp and scrolled through event listings, a blurring parade. Craft night, job fair, open mic, an idea sharpened. What if I set up something simple just for this small part of London, not a data sculpture but a projection? Patterns on the wall, shifting with the footsteps and messages of the people inside. I emailed the manager, offered to set up an installation for free. Surprisingly, he said yes. It rolled out in April. A wall of coloured swirls, pulsing and morphing as people entered, their movement and chatter nudging the lines. A proof of concept, rough but alive. Word got out, a whisper at first. A few teachers curious enough to ask if I'd show the local school kids. I said yes, I kept saying yes, even as family rolled their eyes, even as Matthew joked, "You doing birthday parties now?" But I kept going, scraping by, sometimes coding in the library using the spotty Wi-Fi, accepting little commissions, a map for a museum's foyer, data charts stylized into mural sketches, an interactive subway model for a tech event. Money was lean, but my portfolio grew, and gradually skepticism evolved into a practical silence at home. Still, I'd overhear Mum on the phone, she's still tinkering with her screens. I wish she'd find a real job. I learned to move through my embarrassment like swimming in cold water, breathe, push, keep my eyes on the surface. Time crept on, almost without my noticing. I moved into a shared flat north of the river, lived on instant noodles, accepted odd jobs, teaching coding to retirees, cleaning data for a charity, building infographics for a local election. My bank balance danced on a knife edge, but my name found its way into conversations. People who didn't roll their eyes outright. One July, I got a surprise email from an art and tech festival in Berlin. They'd seen a video of my projection at the community center, grainy but real. Would I be interested in showing something larger, a citywide data map, live and interactive? I said yes, even as my heart crashed hard in fear. The fee wasn't generous, but they'd cover flights and hotels, a stipend. I designed night and day, sometimes sleeping in the chair, ran cables, built code, collaborated with a crew I'd only met through glitchy Zoom calls. For the festival, I built Pulse, a glowing web overlaid on the giant central plaza, shifting as thousands passed, their heart rates and locations stylized into living light. On opening night, I watched as strangers paused, looked up, murmured, smiled. Someone snapped a photo. The local newspaper called it hauntingly evocative, art from the city's nervous system. I flew home with a feverish mix of pride and exhaustion. Nobody at home noticed. When I tried to tell Mum, she just said, "That's nice, love," eyes fixed on bargain adverts. But doors had opened, Maury commissions, bigger projects, a map of refugee journeys for a London film festival, an interactive empathy wall in a council estate, a pulsing field of LEDs visualizing public moods for a campaign. Someone called me a pioneer of data storytelling. I laughed. I barely had furniture in my flat. The city moved on, so did I. My hands steadied. I built, shaped, made things that glowed and pulsed, and sometimes, yes, made people pause just for a moment. For the first time, I found peers who understood, a kind of scrappy tribe. My name appeared on conference listings, interview podcasts, arts magazines. Even as it happened, I barely believed it. Years slipped past, the city greying and gleaming at the same time. Then, one autumn, my phone buzzed with an email from City Hall, a major installation on the Thames, as part of a renewal initiative. They wanted something bold, interactive, unmistakable, a living portrait of London. They'd heard of me. Would I lead the project? This was it, everything I'd fought for. The specifications and meetings came thick and fast. I recruited a team, coders, fabricators, artists, long nights in drafty studios, sore hands, endless emails. We worked through rainstorms, through train strikes, through wave after wave of it can't be done. We did it anyway. Resonance would run along the South Bank, a curving arc of 20 glass sculptures, each one breathing London's data streams in real time. Movement, laughter, moods, civic activity, all poured into the light and color of the glass, shifting and living on the river's edge. There were setbacks, funding delays, technology hiccups, media skepticism. Sometimes I'd visit home, distracted and raw. Matthew, now a sales manager, still ribbed me. "Making glass disco lights now, are we?" Mum would frown at my ruined wardrobe and calloused hands, worrying aloud about my lack of health insurance, boyfriend, savings, but I pressed on. I could feel the installation growing under my fingers, a force that hummed, getting brighter. On launch week, a publicist suggested inviting VIPs, journalists, influencers. She paused. "Do you want family tickets, Elena?" I hesitated. All the jokes, the dismissal, but some small, stubborn part of me insisted, yes. Opening night hung heavy with mist. Lights from the city bled into the clouds, orange and blue. My team scattered among the sculptures, checking sensors, radios hissing softly. Crowds gathered, media, artists, regular Londoners out for an evening, coats pulled tight. Camera crews murmured. Mum and Matthew arrived together, a rarity since Dad died. She clung to her purse. He wore his old football jacket, skeptical as ever. I ushered them in, showed them to the center sculpture, a prism taller than me that shimmered with a dozen colors. I could see Matthew's mouth twitch, ready to quip, but the crowd thickened and the mayor took the stage. Speeches first, words about art and data, what the city could be. I listened, my stomach knotted. Then, finally, my turn. The microphone was cold and thin. I shivered, but my voice did not shake. We live in networks, I said, not just digital but human. Every movement, every word leaves a trace. Tonight, the city itself becomes art, alive, breathing, made by all of you. I pressed the remote with a deliberate softness. The riverbank erupted. Light swept down the arc of glass, blooming in a slow, wave-like ripple. Figures and colors shifted through the glass, dancing to the patterns of laughter, footsteps, passing text messages, even the deep, invisible pulses of mobile signals and public transport. Towers of glass glowed with the voices of the crowd itself. Subtle microphones inside caught laughter, even sighs, and translated them into undulating rings of color. Mum's hand flew to her heart. Matthew stepped closer, eyes widening. All around us people gasped, then fell silent, then began to murmur, then cheer. Tower Bridge gleamed in the background, the river reflecting brilliant light. You could see the colors shift as crowds bunched and dispersed, as wind picked up, as applause rolled along the pier. It was unscripted, wild, every moment unique, real. For once there were no jokes. Mum's face, sometimes so hard, so guarded, broke into a look I'd never seen before. Wonder maybe you did all this. I nodded. Couldn't quite manage words. Nearby I saw Dr. Preble, my old professor, gawping in the press crowd, her mouth O-shaped. Matthew's hand clapped my shoulder, rough and heavy. Bloody hell, Els. The mayor gave me a congratulatory hug, awkward and overdone. Journalists shoved for interviews, but none of it mattered as much as watching my mother's tears. She squeezed my hand. All that nonsense, all this time. I'm sorry, her voice barely rose above the hush. Something loosened in my chest, some knot of shame and anger, finally undone by their witnessing. For years I'd imagined a moment of revenge, of grand I told you so, but as they stood in awe, all I felt was unexpected mercy. After the crowd thinned and the lights cycled into their nighttime lull, I walked my family along the river. For once, Matthew had questions, not cracks. How does it work? How long did it take? How does it know when people are happy? Even Mum grew bold, touching the glass, watching her own reflection ghost and vanish inside the color. I answered, only now realizing how ready I was to let them in. They came to see my flat, cobwebbed with wires, full of tiny models and glowing prototypes. It's messy, but it's home, I said, embarrassed. But Mum only nodded, sitting and looking through the sketchbooks she'd always thrown out as rubbish. Later that night we ate fish and chips in the living room. Mum poured cheap wine, uncharacteristically generous. I'm proud of you, love, she said. The words clanged in the air, clear and shy. I finally believed her, believed myself. The city outside my window still pulsed, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. I was part of the pattern, defiant, afraid, but shining. At last I came home.